So I was thinking about doing a video about Lithuania's main sources of economic activity, but during my early Google searches, I found this other question under the People Also Ask section of Google. Is Lithuania a rich country or a poor country? I guess that's what people are searching. And so I thought this was a much more intriguing question and topic to cover. And that's the question we'll try to answer for today's video. So let's get started. First off, it is interesting that this shows up as a common question on Google. Or maybe it's not that interesting and rather obvious where it comes from. Because to me, it seems like people who don't know anything about the country ask that question because they think of Lithuania as a poor, developing, post-Soviet, Eastern European state. It's like that expectation part in the new and somewhat controversial tourism promotion video from the city of Vilnius,
where the past meets the latest technology.
There are countries that are commonly associated with wealth, such as Switzerland and Saudi Arabia, and others very well connected to poverty, such as a few in West Africa. I think with Lithuania not really being well known around the world, it just draws a big question mark for most people. And so, even before I jump into the research, my automatic answer would be, it depends on who you ask. And this would be followed by, it's all relative. And it depends on which countries you're comparing Lithuania to. But these answers aren't really all that satisfying, are they? So let's get into some numbers and then later discuss issues of wealth, poverty, and wealth inequality in Lithuania. I think a good starting point is this article written by the Borgen Project regarding the slowing poverty in Lithuania. Now it is from 2016, and maybe a bit has changed since then, but let's see what they have to say. First, it says that Lithuania is a high-income country as defined by the World Bank. Its GNI, or gross national income per capita, at the time of writing that article was about $15,000 per year. It was significantly higher than Russia at the time, which was $11,000. Still, it was less than half of the average in the EU, which stood at $34,000. According to 2022 data from the World Bank, that number has gone up by about 1,000, so a little better, but not by much. That Borgen Project article goes on to say that extreme or desperate poverty isn't common in Lithuania, and that less than 1% of the population lived on less than $1 a day. At the same time, poverty in Lithuania was said to be widespread but shallow, and that many Lithuanians live in moderate poverty. This poverty, the article says, is centered in rural areas. I can't argue with that, as that's the impression that I get as well. The larger cities are where the money and higher paying jobs tend to be. Rural Lithuania, the small towns and villages, are where you will find people with lower incomes. Then the article pointed out that Lithuania has a transitioning economy, one that is shifting towards being knowledge-based, with more focus on the sectors of information and communication technologies. Well, it's been 8 years since this article came out, and I think that has very much been the case, at least in my experience. So many people work in tech and IT now, and the country has a well-known laser industry too. Tech firms like Vinted and Nord Security are two of the most well-known Lithuanian tech companies in the world. And finally, the article says that Lithuania has comparatively low unemployment and inequality levels. Interesting points, but let's see if we can find out how much of this still holds true in 2024. So here's what I found from the World Bank. Lithuania's most recent GDP per capita is $25,064. This puts it in 55th spot, although I noticed that a bunch of UK and Chinese territories were listed separately, so maybe in terms of proper countries, which is also hard to define, Lithuania would move up at least a few spots. Interestingly, Lithuania's GDP per capita is even higher than Poland's. In fact, it's higher than most countries east of Poland, except for Estonia. Actually, on the website for Global Finance, its 2024 list puts Lithuania in spot number 41, even ahead of Estonia. So there's that. But maybe the local Lithuanian media has a better idea of things? In a January 2024 article by LRT, it notes that residents of Lithuania living below the absolute poverty line had decreased in recent years, as you can see by the chart here. So if you want to take this chart as a measure of prosperity, it looks like Lithuania is moving in the right direction. However, experts say this is not the best way to measure poverty. That's because the absolute poverty line is set by the government, and critics say that it hasn't been raised properly to reflect recent inflation. Aiste Adomavičienė, head of the National Network of Organizations for Poverty Reduction, told LRT, "If we look at absolute poverty, yes, it is decreasing. But that threshold of €354 is also very low. And you would not say that people who earn 360 euros are not poor. People who receive that amount are not starving, but that doesn't mean that they can meet their needs. Yeah, that is a very fair point. And so experts suggest comparing people's income instead. The article points out that the EU calculates the poverty level as the number of people who earn less than 60% of the median income of the rest of the population. Adoma Viciene stressed that the percentage of those earning less than 60% of the median income of the rest of the population has not changed since Lithuania's accession to the EU and is fluctuating around 20%. The article then makes a note about income inequality and how it is one of the largest in the EU, only lagging behind Bulgaria. Wealth inequality is another important thing to look at, since this can be cleverly hidden when you only use average numbers. This article from Latvia's public broadcaster about income inequality shows that Lithuania is worse than Latvia, and much worse than neighboring Poland. So in simple terms, this would suggest that the rich in Lithuania are quite rich, while the poor are quite poor. A 2023 article by LRT discussed the country's middle class and had these interesting statistics. According to the OECD definition, middle-class incomes are those that range from 75 to 200% of a country's average. So in Lithuania, at least in 2023, that would have been between 1,100 and 2,900 euros per month, before tax. And so according to the article, people who fell into that income bracket made up 62% of Lithuania's population. Another interesting fact was that 9 out of 10 people live in a home they own, but almost a tenth of them have no indoor toilet. And finally, a third of the population has at least 2,000 euros in their bank account at all times, but the rest, which would be 2/3 of the population, have no savings at all and live from paycheck to paycheck. And so that is everything I could find to provide some kind of picture of Lithuania's measure of wealth. Obviously in Vilnius, you can look at the Porsche dealership near the airport and the Aston Martin/Bentley/Maserati dealership in the central business district as signs that there are definitely wealthy people in Lithuania. But actually, if you walk 5 or 10 minutes from either of those businesses, you'll easily find families living in quite old and rundown housing. So I'm not sure what is the best way to conclude this video and answer the question of whether Lithuania is rich or poor. Maybe just saying yes is the best way to answer? But again, the reality is that Lithuania is simply in the middle of a long and varied list. It's no Switzerland or Norway, but it's also far from being like Burundi or Sierra Leone. But what about you? What would your answer be if someone asked you if Lithuania was a rich or poor country? Let me know by leaving a comment down below. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. If you enjoy this channel and want to support me in making more videos, please consider becoming a Patreon patron. There's a link down in the description for you to check out. Thanks so much for watching.